Welcome back, Art 1. We are going to be continuing working on our paper mache sculptures today, or our alebrijes. So you should be starting to move on to working on limbs, details, adding 3D elements for eyes, ears, horns, scales, tails, anything you can think of that your animal's going to have, that's what you're going to go ahead and be adding on at this point. Remember, compression is key. If your animal is loosey-goosey, it's going to fall apart. The more tape you use, the more structure that your animal is going to have, and the more it's going to be stable and easily held together. So you will need newspaper, tape, and some cardboard this time. So if you'll see, I'm taking my little turtle bird and I am adding on, so I'm actually using it as a stencil. So I cut it out of the cardboard. I added my little fin flipper / wing shape, and I'm cutting it out of the cardboard. It is, make sure you cut away from yourself, all those things. I'm checking to make sure I like the size. And then I'm going to actually use it as a stencil to cut out my next one. So if you see, I didn't like how small it was, so I made it a little bit bigger, and I'm cutting out a larger size. And then I'm checking to see if I like that more. I think I could cut it down a little bit, still a little too oversized. And now that I found the two that I'm happy with, I'm going to use them as a stencil to cut out perfect exact ones so that I can have them for the other side. So that's an easy trick to make sure that both of your limbs match. I'm also choosing to use cardboard because it is a stabler structure to build my paper mache on top of. So you don't want to do it for your entire project, but for things like limbs, tails, those are really good strong pieces that you can use to, like I said, add paper on top of. You're still going to tape and use the newspaper on top of it. These are just structural elements that kind of make your life easier, especially for things that are flat like wings and flippers. I would also think like tails for dolphins, whales, all those sorts of things. I am making sure that I have them all centered the way I want. I'm also going to make them 3D. Think about that. This is a 3D project. You are thinking in the round. So I'm going to bend them and force them into the position that I would like. I am adding tape. Oh, and see if you notice, I am adding little strips of tape. I would go ahead and do that. Make your life easier. You're going to want to have tape readily available. You're going to be holding stuff at awkward positions, so having that available tape will make your life a lot easier. So I'm building up my flippers right now, or my wings, I guess you would want to call them. So I'm building up my wings, making them are more 3D. I don't want just a flat piece of cardboard because that isn't really the shape of a wing or a flipper. So I'm building up the shape, giving it more dimension with the tape and the newspaper. And if you notice, I am bending as I am building, making sure that I'm creating that dimension that I like. I'm using lots of tape, and I'm making sure the tape is really smooth. So smoothing out the tape and the newspaper as you're building really makes your life easier also, because then it's less of a it's less of an issue when you're going to build your paper mache on top of it. You already have a smooth texture. You have a surface that you're already working on that's ready to take the paper mache. So if you have a loosey-goosey like texture surface that's all like different pieces of paper, it's all kind of falling apart, it's going to be really hard. So make your life easier and tape around it and make sure that you have a smooth surface to start building your paper mache on top of. And if you notice, I am looking and referencing back to my original one, my original flipper, as I start to build the second one, because I want to make sure that they are about the same. So I don't want one to be super fat and one to be skinny. I am taping and I'm constantly checking and comparing. Adding that dimension on. If you can tell, I am compressing. I'm compressing with the tape, and then I'm also compressing with my fingers, moving the piece down. Okay, so I'm checking to make sure that I'm happy with them and that they fit, and I'm moving on to my back flippers or wings. And I'm going to follow the same process of building up the wings or flippers, whatever you want to call them. So building them up with the newspaper. I am getting my tape ready to go. Remember, think smarter, not harder. Um, the more the more grace you can give yourself to make things easier as you build, the better and the easier it's going to be overall. Building up, creating that dimension. And then forming and compressing with the tape. Some other tools that you can use. If you are making an animal that has cylindrical legs, so I mean that's a lot. That's most four-legged creatures. You can think about using things like paper towel rolls, toilet paper rolls, any sort of cylindrical cardboard piece. Those make great starts to legs. So think about that too. So instead of having to cut out a flat piece of cardboard, you could actually use something cylindrical that will probably make your life a little bit easier too. I've been saying it and I'm going to keep saying, everybody, compression is key. It really will make your life easier once you start adding your paper mache on top. So I am finishing up here with my last little bit of detail on tape detail on top of my wing slash flippers. And then I'm going to go about starting to add them to my piece. So I actually needed a pair of scissors for this. You could glue, but I just decided to tape. So I cut into the bottom where I had compressed all that paper to create the dome shape. And then I'm taping back in. So I had left like a little tab that really was easily fit up into my shell of my turtle bird. So I taped and then I compressed the cardboard up inside of it and then I taped it back closed. And then I noticed that it compressed and flattened out a little bit, so I'm adding a little bit of support to make sure that it can hold itself up. And then I'm taping to make sure everything is secure and in its place that it needs to be. Remember, I told y'all that you would use a lot of tape. You're going to use tape and then more tape. I would expect to use about a roll for each sculpture. Now I'm going in and I'm making sure that my flipper wings are in the right position. I'm moving it and forming it and compressing as I go, making sure that my animal is actually in the shape and the position that I want it to be before I do my final touches like adding tape to really lock it into its position. And if you notice from the difference between the front of my turtle bird to the back, the front where it's had its flippers added or its wings added on, a lot more tape is there. That's, like I said, to make sure that it's really stuck in there. And if you notice right there, I'm actually using a thicker tape. So sometimes if you have a few different sizes of tape, it makes it easier. But if you don't have two different sizes of tape, no big deal. Just the more tape, the better. Still wasn't quite in the position, so I'm just compressing more paper because compression is key. So now that I've inserted the back legs and they're in the position I want, once again, I'm making sure that there's a lot of support and I'm taping them into position. I'm locking them in basically. Like I want to make it to where I can wiggle that Alebrije sculpture around and none of the limbs are going to move. None of those little feather flippers are going to wiggle out of place. They're all going to stay in exactly this place I want them to. So I'm just getting extra tape, making sure everything's ready to go. Really compressing and smoothing. I'm compressing, moving everything around, forming it into the place I want it. And I'm about ready to go to start my actual paper mache on top. So good luck!